So today is the 116th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And I know many of you will have attended the first 115, will know how this works. It's the same style each time. We're back to normal today. You may, if you joined us on Tuesday, you'll know we had two victims of financial crime, two people duped by an offender. Today, we're back to the normal format, three experts from different parts of the world here to discuss a topic. And the idea of thought leadership is that we critique what's going on today in order that we get a better type of security tomorrow. And the topic today is something that has emerged from previous webinars. We've heard about counterfeiting, how it's feeding organized crime, how it's undermining business, how it's contributing to lost taxes, how it's a phenomenally important weapon used by criminals in different ways. If it's in drugs, and we've got counterfeit drugs you might not even know. They don't work and you don't realize you're not being sold. You think the drugs are going wrong. If it goes into food or drink, it can lead to serious illness. It can lead to death, and it has done. So really, really important topic. And what we want to do is what's going on? What are we going to do? And we've got three experts as normal. So in a second, I'll invite them, each of them to introduce themselves. Once they've done that, I will invite you, the audience, to, after they've made an opening statement, invite you, the audience, to ask any questions. So if you want to get your questions in, try and do it early. Use the question answer button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to incorporate you in the ensuing discussion. So without further ado then, let's go and meet our panel. Three experts, as I say, and I'm looking forward to this one. It's a dynamic topic and one that I'm keen to learn about. So let's first of all go to Kieron. Kieron, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Hello, everybody. I'm Kieron Sharp. In a previous life, I was a 30-year career police officer, detective in London, the UK. But for many years now, I've been working at FACT, which is the Federation Against Copyright Theft. It's better known as FACT around the world. And we work in the audiovisual industry, protecting content and dealing with piracy problems.
Thank you very much indeed, Kieron. So we'll go from just south of London, where I am as well, as it happens, all the way over to Delhi in India, and Sanjay. Sanjay, can you introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Martin. Myself, Sanjay Kaushik. I head a company called Netrika, which is an Indian company having offices in Singapore and Middle East. We do operate onto the brand protection or the anti-counterfeiting solutions. We are one of the largest anti-counterfeiting companies in the country, in India. Also, we are one of the unique companies, probably only in the world, which has the online and the offline solutions both, which means that we have foots on ground to do the sample purchase, doing the enforcement actions. On the same side, we have the technological arm, which can also look into takedown and online monitoring of the system.
Sanjay, thank you very much indeed. And finally, our third elite panelist on the elite panel is Euan. Euan, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hello there. Euan Grant, Grant and Gutsell Customs Tax and Border Control Consultants. We're a consortium of, and the name rather explains it. We provide qualitative and to a certain extent quantitative intelligence analyst and risk reduction. Most of our work has been in emerging Europe, the ex-Soviet states, Middle East, Western East Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, very much looking forward to hearing from the three of you. So what we're going to do, as is normal, is we're going to ask each of our panelists for their opening statements. 3 minutes when they got to say whatever they want to say about this topic. So without further ado, let's go to our first panelist. Kieron, can we have your opening statement, please?
Yes, of course. Yes. FACT protects content, as I've already mentioned, within the audiovisual industry. So that's to do with films and TV, broadcasting and sports rights holders. All of those areas wrapped up together, we help to protect what they produce. Over time, of course, it's changed. You've seen it change. DVDs were the problem not so long ago. We don't see very much of that at all now. It's all online. It's mainly streaming. And the biggest problem within streaming is live sports. Everything else can get wrapped up alongside live sports, but it's now live sports where people are ripping off the system by getting an illegal feed and avoiding paying for the live sports content. The way you get that can be done in numbers of different ways, of course. Mainly it's a box which you plug into your television, or into your Wi-Fi, and you receive from various different parts around the world through an app. You receive the programs you want to watch. And so if you sign up for live sports, you will also get TV shows, films, everything you could possibly want, which of course is making a massive impact on the industry in all areas. It's difficult to deal with streaming. When you had a physical product, it's a lot easier to actually see something that's tangible. When you talk to other people, when you talk to governments, when you talk to law enforcement, when you're working with other people, a tangible product is much easier to describe and for them to understand. Something that doesn't really exist is a lot more difficult for them to take in. So it's a huge problem. There's a lot of work being done all the time around it. But our mantra is really, what can we do? What are the different things we can do? The many things we can do to disrupt, to dismantle, to deter, to prevent, to just try and make a big impact on the illegal system that's out there, which is killing the legal system.
Thank you very much indeed. There's plenty of issues there we're going to come back to, I'm sure. Don't forget, audience, if you'd like to get your questions in early, use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to incorporate that in the ensuing discussion. Let's then go to Sanjay. Sanjay, your opening statement, please.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, once again. And, we have seen enough of counterfeiting in the past. We have seen, and we have also seen how the counterfeiters have gone into syndicates, how these have been supplying to armed dealers, terrorism activities and everything. But in the current situation, and I will only talk of India as on current date, what we have seen in the current pandemic situation, the counterfeiters have not hesitated even to counterfeit the COVID drugs. There's a drug which was very well, it was very much in demand for COVID treatment. It's a different story that currently the ICMR, which is the Institute of Medical Research in India, has just removed that drug from the COVID treatment. But the drug which was required and which has helped a lot of people in India was remdesivir. Counterfeiters were so quick that within this pandemic situation, they immediately counterfeited the drugs and they supplied it. I don't know how many people have died to that. We have done a lot of work to get hold of criminals, and the counterfeiters have got arrested multiple people. It is crazy, and in the current scenario, what has also happened is, since most of the world was going under lockdown in some of the phases, India was partially locked down in the current scenario, but last year, it was locked down for many months. The entire nation was under lockdown. And what we have seen is the online sales have increased drastically. It has gone multifold, the online sales, because the malls are not working, they are not operational, you cannot go to the market. Only thing which you're left with is the online sale. Online also gives a lot of opportunity for the counterfeiters to counterfeit and sell their products. It is difficult to track those guys. It is difficult to find those guys. It is, jurisdictions could be multiple. There is a large issue of jurisdiction because the one person can be shipping it from one jurisdiction and getting the payment into another jurisdiction, and he could be sitting in the third jurisdiction. It becomes a multi-level, multi-jurisdiction issue where the problem arises of how do you actually enforce it. One, you can always take down the links. You can always take down the sites which are there, but how do you actually stop it? You need to take some police actions, you need to do some enforcements, but when it becomes the multi-jurisdiction issue, it becomes a highly difficult job even for the law enforcement to tackle with that. Of course, we all know that the law enforcement's first prime responsibility is law and order. They're not actually running behind the counterfeiters, though, as I said, that there have been enough instances and enough proofs that the counterfeiters have been involved into syndicate crimes. They have been involved into terrorist fundings. They have been involved into child trafficking and multiple other things. But in the current scenario, when we have seen these people quickly turning around and making the counterfeit drugs during the COVID times and putting the patients in danger, a lot of people have died. That's where the problem arises. That's where it becomes inhuman. Somebody selling a luxury good, probably a Mont Blanc pen or a LV purse or something, is still, it's still making money. That's okay. It's a financial crime. But if somebody is making a counterfeit drug and people are dying, I think that's inhuman to look at. That's one of the major problem which we have seen in the current times in India. The other issues which I've seen is the increase in the online sales. The online sales of every single good, whether it's the FMCG, whether it's the luxury goods, whether it's the medicines, pharma, or even your daily needs. Everything is now moving online. Now, has these companies, I'm sure the companies like Flipkart or Walmart or Amazon, they have their policies and processes in place. But how do you stop those independent websites? There have been enough websites which has been marked by US authorities and multiple other authorities that these are the people who are selling counterfeits, but they just put that one particular site down and there are 10 other sites up in next 10 minutes. How do you actually stop that? There is a lot of work which needs to be done. And Kieron just spoke about the live streaming of the events of the sports and movies and other things. That's again has been a major challenge with the broadcasters. We do support a lot of broadcasters in India. We work with Disney, we work with Star, multiple other Indian broadcasters. And we've done a lot of work on that side to ensure that the broadcasters doesn't face these issues, even on the online thing. The online monitoring is a thing which is going on and it is going to increase in times to come. So I think our focus here should be on the online monitoring and online takedowns.
Sanjay, thank you very much indeed. Don't forget, audience, if you'd like to ask a question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, and I'll endeavour to come to you straight after we've heard from our third panellist. Euan, your opening statement, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would endorse everything that's said by Kieron and Sanjay, from the physical to the online, both in its own right as the provision of services. And of course, the sports stuff is almost entirely that. And as Sanjay's pointed out regarding illicit pharmaceuticals with fatal consequences, that's hybrid, that's online to facilitate the use of physical goods. And I think they both come together in two of the greatest challenges for the international trade system. You've got Russia and the Russian-speaking countries regarding online, and you've got China in that respect, but also as the huge supplier of counterfeit goods, although that will displace as more robust supply chains change as a result of COVID. And can we be clear in relation to the Russian-speaking countries, Russia itself and China, you might add Greater China in that, we are not dealing just with organized criminals. Organized crime, the phrase is rather hackneyed now. It can mean a multitude of things. These are often state-sponsored or at least state-protected. So following on from what Mike Levy said last week in the chat on money laundering, and of course he's always worth listening to again and again, we need to work out what can be done, what cannot be done, who will do it, which really means who, that's an awful lot of who's, how, with whom, and in relation to it, much greater public private sector cooperation, much greater cooperation within the two groups, more sharing, but better sharing and better use of experience, shorter communication channels for this. And that is not going to be easy. It is going to be hard and it's going to take a lot of effort. It cannot just be an IT issue, though there are some positive signs from the planned EU-wide, which will act out to other countries and regions, planned database of money laundering, which can go some way to track down the online structures, which, as Sanjay said, you're not one down and there's 10 up the next day. I would, to show how topical and how hybrid and hydra this is, just take a look at two press releases in the last few weeks. One literally today from Europol in relation to the Italian mafia counterfeiting currency, physical currency in Germany, and about a week or so ago, something like the 7th or 6th of May, in relation to counterfeit foodstuffs no value, where it's interesting to note, a la Mike Levy and people like Oliver Bullough, that although there is barely no United Kingdom involvement, there is a United Kingdom shell company involved. Find what we can find and then follow out from there. Good luck, because this ain't going to be easy. This is years and years of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, brilliant. This sets out the context in which we're facing here. Now, I want to just go to the first question. I'm going to come to you, Kieron, first, if I might. So you set the context about the problem. And Glenn Kitterian, a former panelist, actually, Glenn, asked this question. This issue will never go away, and Kieron was saying that. And in fact, it's getting worse due to it being driven by customers' desire to circumvent laws to get something for free, or to get it cheap at least. Given this, I guess, Kieron, let's just break this down a bit. What should industry be doing beyond those headline issues of sharing and collaborating and cooperating? Obviously, Euan's raised that. Easy words to say, used with abandonment, pockets of good practice, largely exaggerated in terms of its impact. Agree, Kieron?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. There are pockets of good practice, in fact, large pockets of good practice, and there's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. There is more that could be done in the collaborative, absolutely. In particular, where in the streaming space, the online space, people now use social media platforms and the marketplaces to a large extent in live streaming, as well as the traditional ways of selling online, selling goods online. So there's more can be done there. There's more can be done with government pressure. I think there's more can be done by law enforcement, because it's not a mainstream offence for law enforcement. And maybe we need a few more PIPQs around the world. You probably all know about the City of London Police Intellectual Property Crime Unit.
But why would though, can I just pick you up on this? Why would the police get involved? I mean, as Sanjay was saying, there are other priorities there. We could say we want them to get more involved, but almost on each of these webinars, whatever the topic, the thing is we need to get police more involved. What's the incentive for police to get involved? Industry are losing money. I mean, really, they've got bigger problems: child abuse, trafficking, domestic abuse, haven't they?
Yeah, they have indeed, and that dominates, particularly in the cybercrime areas, computer crime investigations they have. They're the areas that they are concentrating on and should be concentrating on. But often you have organised crime behind these crimes, making a lot of money. That money is used for other more heinous crimes, which we should never forget and never always be aware of. And it's important that the police recognise that and deal with that. So organised crime groups often use this as a money-making method of funding other forms of crime. So I think that's something we should never lose sight of. Additionally, this is just another form of economic crime, and economic crime is so damaging to the economy that the frauds that take place are exceedingly damaging. In the world that I work in, the creative industries, what they provide to the GDP in the countries they operate in is huge. And if they don't make films, they don't fund football, and they don't make TV programs, and you as a punter can't see what you want to see. It's the ordinary people who have ordinary jobs that lose out, and then it's the economies of those countries that lose out as well. Okay,
Sanjay, let me come to you then. So very specifically, Sanjay, I want to break down to what industry should be doing. And beyond those sort of big words, collaboration and what should we expect industry to do?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I think very appropriate and very pertinent question, and very pertinent point that I am not a big fan of big words or big jargons. I always talk about the basics. And I'll just take 30 seconds on the previous question, which you just asked, Kieron, is that it's not about the industry is losing money, but the government is also losing money, because these counterfeiters are not paying their taxes. So it's not only the industry, but the government is also losing a lot of money on that. Now, what the industry should be doing in that? So I think the major part is it's about three-pronged approach, which I always talk about, how the three-pronged approach would work. One is the education. How do you educate your own team members, your customers, your judiciary, the law enforcement? You have to educate everyone. It is not that you are fighting the counterfeits on the FMCG side, but when you have to buy a luxury watch or a Montblanc pen, you just go and buy it from the counterfeit market because it's very, very cheap, but it looks original. It looks very nice. And a fancy watch on your hand or a Mont Blanc pen into your pocket. It looks very nice. And you're still fighting counterfeit of your own products. It doesn't happen that way. It is an approach which has to be totally taken by everyone. So education is something which is very, very important on this when the industry has to look at. The second is, of course, their own registration. So you have to make your copyright, trademark, patent, all those registered. So that's one side. And the third is enforcement. Keep enforcing your copyright and trademarks. How do you enforce that? That's a separate story. You know, you have to involve the law enforcement. You have to involve the cybercrime. And also, like you were asking in your previous question to Kieron, is that why should police be doing that? Or why should be, because they have their own another priorities. We have to look at that. And I can talk of India and a couple of other countries where there have been some specific units which has been made to fight only the counterfeit activities. So copyright and trademark has been very, very prominently taken up. Like in India, I can tell you, when we come to the movies in the south of India, in Telangana and Hyderabad, there have been a particular unit by the police which only looks into that part. When we come to Delhi, there are district investigation units, and there is a special economic offense wing which looks into the trademark and copyright related matters. Similarly, there are multiple states within India where there have been different departments within the police which looks into these kind of crime. Of course, I understand that when the law and order situation comes in, or when the situation like COVID comes in, you know, the situation changes. We have been talking to the government during this COVID time also that we should be allowed to come on the ground and find the counterfeiters, and police should support us. But looking at the manpower situation, you know, the lot of police personnel are getting COVID infected. They are getting into troubles. It's becoming a difficult, but we have got permissions at some places, especially on the pharma side, where we have been able to go and conduct the enforcement actions on the counterfeiters of pharma products.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Euan, I'd like to come to you, Euan, on this. Euan, you deal with industry. What I want to try and understand, is there any low-hanging fruit here? Is there any untapped potential? Is there anything that we can grab onto? Because it is such a massive problem, and it is. But there's got to be some sort of focus somewhere, I guess. What's your guidance? What's your intuition on this? Where we go first?
Oh gosh, that's a very good one, because the low-hanging fruit isn't perhaps necessarily in the long run where the future is, but point taken. I mean, it's an old adage. If you have a new unit or you're looking at a new crime, you don't go after the really difficult first. You build up experience by doing something fairly simple, getting people's confidence, working together, and then go forward. I would just suggest cautiously to look at counterfeit foodstuffs, which can lead into counterfeit pharmaceuticals, building on experience of alcohol and tobacco. And the reason I say that is because that is widespread across nations, and it involves bringing in countries for whom the priorities aren't necessarily the same for countries. So it's made clear country X cooperates on our problem Y. We will cooperate with country X on their problem Z. And I think alcohol, tobacco, and you remember the meat scandals, the horse meat scandals in Europe, across Europe a few years ago, about 2015 or so on, is a way forward. And that we have different priorities for different regions, and it's not a straight swap. It's a barter of what prioritizes for each. Having said that, I think the cyber issue and the streaming that Kieron and Sanjay referred to, I think that is so huge that hard or not, you have to take an approach to it. But I would suggest the way to do it is something that the British Armed Forces are talking out very seriously across the board in their conventional military operations, or their new military operations in the cyber age, is bringing in civilians who are effectively operating to military command. So that would, of course, in this case mean civilians operating under the command of police. Now, I know, of course, that does happen, but, and of course, Sanjay's mentioned his company and others have been involved in this. India is going to get much more important. It's already important now, but with the changes afoot re China, and particularly if China grabs Taiwan, India is going to be a lot more important.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting point about looking at the priorities of different countries and working that way. Not thought about, not heard of that either. Right, let me go back to my questions again. Kieron, come to you again, if I might, first with Bob Scott. Now, here's Bob Scott's question. It's about the, and we've heard a lot about this. You know, when I look at counterfeiting, you've always got products being developed that in some way or other impact on some part of the supply chain, which offers some sort of protection. Given the scale of this, Kieron, something is going wrong. Presumably, those products to protect different products in the supply chain are themselves faulty. I mean, is there a problem there with this? Is it that bad?
How exactly do you mean products?
Well, I'm just thinking of all the security measures that are in place, all those things that, you know, identify fake whiskey or protect products against certain type of manipulation. I mean, it just feels as though the supply chain is weak in some way. I mean, obviously, these products have got to get into the supply chain. Now, in filming, you've given an example of how it can be done, but somewhere or other, it strikes the security world's not on the ball. That's the point I'm trying to make, Kieron.
Yeah, I understand. Well, security measures themselves invariably get cracked, whether that's some form of cyber security or it's physical security. Invariably, it gets broken at some point, which always creates the problem. So if you can't protect it through that security, you've got to look at other ways of doing that. Yes, there are no easy answers. There are certainly tried and tested methods which work. There is no one solution, though. There is no one magic solution out there that's going to solve the problem for us. All the things that we do and new things as technology develops and helps us, they must all be done at the same time. So you won't find that one thing that we do is ever going to solve the problem. It's got to be lots of different ways of doing that. And some of that might be simple disruption. Some of that might be taking people to the ultimate sanction of criminal prosecution. And then in between that, you've probably got lots of other things that will just make a difference. But they have to be done. They have to be done relentlessly. Once you start down that route, you've got to keep going. It's not an option to be able to say, okay, tick box, we've done that bit, because the problem will always come back.
Yeah, and it's relatively easy to do, I suppose. I mean, Sanjay, let me come to you on the same issue. I mean, on Bob's question about supply chain. Here's the thing: you were talking about counterfeit drugs in response to COVID. Very worryingly, Sanjay. Sanjay, obviously, people can sell those. Counterfeiters can sell them direct to the public, but are they able to get them into the supply chain in some way? And if so, how do they get stuff into the supply chain?
It's again a very, very pertinent thing, you know, as Kieron was also speaking about the technological aspect, that how do we identify the counterfeits and the genuines between, you know, it could be hologram, it could be different things. How these counterfeiters have been doing is they will penetrate into the companies or the corporations' actual supply chain at some level. It could be either through a distributor or through a wholesaler or probably at retailer end, and they will penetrate into the supply chain and push their counterfeit products. Generally, what happens is it's the 50-50. The ratio could be, you know, 60-40, 30-70 could be, but generally a mixed match of the counterfeit products and the genuine products. They are mixed and then sold. So a shopkeeper, a retail outlet will never keep 100% counterfeit or 100% genuine. They will generally mix it around, and then looking at the customer, you know, these counterfeiters are also very, very smart. Let's accept that they are probably taking consulting from somebody else. You know, they know the technology, they know they also know how the companies are, you know, taking the actions. One of the things which I have seen in a couple of last years is that the counterfeiters would exactly know that a company is looking at benchmark of this much Caesar. And if the Caesar is less than this, the company is not going to look at it. And they will start keeping the stocks into smaller pieces here and there and into smaller pieces, because they also understand that the company is looking at on ROI, the cost, whatever it is, but they will try to penetrate into the original supply chain through the retailers or the wholesalers, push their products there. Once it has come through the supply chain, it becomes very, very difficult to identify whether the product is genuine or the counterfeit. And they know this. They are smart guys. They are technologically advanced. They know everything. They make the products so advanced that at times the product owners, the brand owners are not able to even distinguish between whether the product is genuine or counterfeit. They have to send it to their labs, and then only the lab reports comes, then only they will be able to tell whether it's a counterfeit or genuine. I think I'll just like to add one more point, Martin, before I just give the mic back to you. On the last point, when you asked me that what should industry do, is the industry should actually look at creating that fear psychosis in the market, and how the organization or the industry can look at creating that fear psychosis is do some solid enforcement actions, publicize them, and keep the awareness high among the customers that what is genuine, what is counterfeit. And if the person is selling a counterfeit product, the police, the law enforcement will come heavily, and there will be heavy penalties on that. As of now, the violation of copyright and trademark is not taken that seriously. There are chances that the person might be just left on some damages. You know, he pays us some few money and a few dollars and he just walks off. He's not sent to jail for long. I think we have to look at how the penalties and the damages and the fear psychosis, which I'm talking of, can be increased on the folks who are doing counterfeit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay. I'm going to come to you, if I might, Euan. Euan, is this point about, I wonder if I can go back to organisations. I'm interested in the supply chain and how counterfeiters get goods into the supply chain, because given what I've been hearing, it's surely the case that the supply chain owners, managers simply aren't on the ball. Their procedures are just not good enough. I mean, it just seems incredible to me, Euan. You can have a problem this big and what seems to be weak procedure or inadequate procedure. Am I right, Euan? Am I exaggerating?
No, you're not, and you are right. I think a number of reasons for that is, well, I mean, go to a major port, Mumbai, Sharjah, where, of course, Sanjay's team are based. Very interesting location, that. Rotterdam, obviously. And look at the number of people who are around compared with even 10, let alone 30 or 40 years ago. Too much. We need to restore middle management. We're seeing this in the pandemic about a lot of other things. And we need to be talking much better. And it needs to be a whole of company, whole of industry, whole of government, big and small. And indeed, perhaps this is pious and exaggerating, a whole of society, which is where the publicity bit and the damage to Joe Public and the revenues comes in. But yes, it can't be, it's like hacking and computer software theft. We've got to get away from this. That's a matter for the IT department, or stolen production from a factory where there's production after hours, and it's not that is not just for, it's not just for the security department, it's for everyone. And I do believe there is a very real danger. I think some IT companies, some cybersecurity companies have oversold their products and perhaps have offered something which isn't technically possible yet. I think there's a real danger that we become somewhat lazy and lost what is called revenue nose.
Yeah, okay. I mean, very damning, of course, but here we are. Well, look, let me just see if I can get another question. We're running out of time. There's so many issues coming up here, I think, fascinating for many of us who are not experts in the field. Let me come to you first, Sanjay, this time. And a question from Rajiv Martha, who's himself a former panelist. And one of the questions he's asked is about who we involve in terms of responding. So we've got Euan saying we want a whole industry response, and I get that. I get this issue about cybercrime. I guess the challenge I wonder, though, Sanjay, is that when it's state-sponsored and when it's organised crime, where you look to then to get some sort of meaningful response. Sanjay, can I ask you to be quick? Because I'd like to bring Kieron and Euan in on the same question. Sanjay, just your thoughts first, please.
See, again, we have to look at that. It is the law enforcement agencies which are going to take action. We do not, as an industry or as an enforcement agency, we do not have any authority over taking any action. It is the law enforcement agency which is authorized and empowered by the government and the legislation that they can only take the action. We can do the investigation, what we generally do. We can find where the counterfeiters are, where the manufacturing facilities are, where the storing facilities are, and we guide the law enforcement or the police forces to that place. But can we go there and do that? No, we can't. It is the law enforcement agency which has to do the action because they are empowered and they have those powers. So it is they only who can do it. It's not, industry can collaborate with them, industry can educate on them. When we talk of India or when we talk of Dubai is a different ballgame altogether. When we go to the Middle East, UAE, it's a different ballgame. It's the kind of volume of seizures which we see there is the containers and containers and containers. When we come to India, it's all about looking at the manufacturing. So Dubai, you will not find the manufacturing units, but India, besides the imports of counterfeit coming from China, India has some production facilities as well. They are not as in the big sizes which we see in China, but these facilities are there which can keep supplying the counterfeit products in the market. Who can take the action, again, is a big question. It is the law enforcement agencies can take the action, not as the industry. Industry can collaborate, can facilitate. And of course, we have to look at and be careful while we are facilitating and educating. We have to be careful of the laws like FCPA and anti-bribery UK Act. So we have to be very, very careful of those things because that could put you into a lot of other troubles while you are going to look into the side of the counterfeiters' illegal activities. It is important to see that you are not on the wrong side of the law.
Okay, Sanjay, thank you very much indeed. Euan, I want to come to you next, and then if I could get Kieron to comment on the same question. You mentioned Mike Levy earlier, Euan, and he's got a question here, which I'd like to put to you first. And it says, can anything be done about changing the incentives to get firms or the public to report counterfeiting, which I guess is a first stage? Let's get more awareness of what's going on. And even if you do, is it clear who they would report it to? So let me come to Euan first. Kieron, I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well, if I might. Euan.
Again, always worth hearing Michael Levy's points. I noticed that there's recently been some people rolling back on huge figures that have been quoted about money laundering, and they're now admitting, well, really these figures are plucked out of the air. And I think we need to concentrate when it comes to counterfeiting, big C and small c, on cases and obvious impact. Much of this really can't be quantified. I've never heard Mike Levy quote figures out of here because it's not really relevant, I think. I think I would prefer to take the second question first. Duplication, yes. Inevitably, there will be duplication here. You have to duplicate because you can't just rely on any one organization, but you have to know somebody is taking an overall situational awareness. And it doesn't entirely matter who that is within a country or a region or an industry, but you've got one. And of course, the obvious example here is FACT is ideally situated there. It has evolved to take into account changing situations. I think there is an argument for certain favorable treatment or leniency or light touch, a bit like the AEO, the Authorized Economic Operators System for international trade. That people will be retained on that and may even have certain conditions relaxed, so reducing their costs in return for prompt action. The cigarette companies would have had some reasons to look at that a few years ago. And just quickly, relation to Gordon Knight's question about legitimate production and counterfeiting being inserted, that most certainly is the case. Over 10 years ago, I believe it was Philip Morris at their plant near St. Petersburg in Russia. They tested suspect cigarettes versus counterfeit, and it versus genuine, and in fact it was the counterfeit which were passed as genuine. They'd inserted it into the production line, which obviously involves a lot of insiders and protected people. So okay. Yeah, command and control and single points of contact, but not just reliance on that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Kieron, I'd like to come to you. It's a good question for you. And what I'm really after here, Kieron, in Mike's question is about what incentives can we give people to report?
Okay, that's really difficult. And let me explain why I say it's difficult. In the world of intellectual property crime, it's a very secret offence. You don't see it happening all the time. It's not reported in this way that burglaries might be reported or vehicle crime. It's more like drugs and corruption, and that it just carries on, and it's uncovered when organisations like FACT or rights holders with their own investigations or whoever that might be uncover it, and you see a particular moment in time of what that problem is all about. You don't see the whole picture, and we don't know what the whole picture is. Reporting it, if we can, is important, and I think it was just said, does it really matter who it's to, as long as it is somebody who can deal with that? So you have the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau in the UK, but you might be able to report it to the National Crime Agency. Reporting is important. Just having it as a report then doesn't do anything unless you're going to use that. So use the information, create intelligence, provide a picture, get to understand the landscape, where the problems are, the transshipment routes, who's behind it, which countries, and so on. There's so much more that can be done in that space, and that is really managing the information and intelligence you have. You start doing that, I think people will report more. If the incentive at the moment to report is simply that nothing will happen, well, that's no incentive. So it does need a central repository in each country, preferably a central repository covering a region like the EU, but it does need that.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of, when you said that, Kieron, it sort of sounded obvious.
Well, I thought it was.
Yeah, but I mean, in a sense, if you haven't got a central repository, how on earth could you begin to build up trends, build up a focus, and build up some sort of a way to respond appropriately in the best possible way?
Yes, indeed. And we all have a part to play in that. So it's not just law enforcement and governments, it's rights holders as well. In spending more money on protecting their own product and content, and that might involve building their own intelligence picture. They then might be able to cooperate with people in the same space. So whether that's clothing and footwear, or it's pharmaceuticals, or alcohol, or whatever it might be, because there'll be the same people behind it. They don't just stick with Adidas and not do Nike.
Gentlemen, absolutely fascinating conversation. We could have gone on. There are so many, you raised so many issues, actually, many I wasn't aware of. So thank you very much indeed for that insight. Thank you for the audience for your questions too. We will definitely be returning to this in future webinars. Still a massive worldwide issue. And as we can tell, there's so much potential to do more. Interesting. Okay, don't forget, a copy of this recording and a blog will be on the website tomorrow. We've got a major project on at the moment. Dr. Janice Goldstraw-White and I are doing a project on the barriers to the mandatory reporting of fraud, finding solutions and sharing best practice. Is the mandatory reporting of fraud a good idea? Where is it being done well, and why might it not work? Keen to hear your views, keen to hear any thoughts that you've got. We'll have a webinar on this in a few weeks' time. Also, another research project focusing on security officers, those on the front line of the security sector, want to know what they think about their job and about their modern role in those 9 countries. Do please encourage them to fill it in. We can get their views. It will be the first insight of its kind done in this way. Also to say that when we're looking at outstanding performance and doing things well, the OSPAs are open in Kenya, Romania, and the Benelux. just opened in US and Germany as well. Thanks to Team Software for being our headline sponsors there. And the Tackling Economic Crime Awards. If you're involved in any area of economic crime, we're very interested to know about it, because those who are doing well, for the reasons we've heard today, need to be recognised. The Techers are open in the UK, so please get your entries in early. The Cyber OSPAs are also open now, worldwide Cyber OSPAs, lots of categories, all those supporting associations. Really, really important that we recognise those who are outstanding. So please, please do get your entries into the Cyber OSPAs now. Finally, to say, we're going through it all again on Tuesday when we're looking at the insider threat. That topic cropped up today, didn't it? 4 panelists on Tuesday. How serious is staff dishonesty and what are we doing about it? Some fascinating insights on that I'm expecting. And on Thursday, our image of security. What are the best bits and how do we promote them? That also overlapped today. So once again, thank you very much indeed, you, the audience, for your questions. Thank you very much again to my panel for their insights and expertise. I hope that you'll join us again on Tuesday. Myself and in the background, Hannah Miller and Christine Brooks. Until we see you again, hopefully Tuesday, wherever you are in the world, stay safe.